Working on the monoblock here, I got it cleaned up. Looks pretty good. You can see some lines and stuff in there. That's just a little bit of dust and stuff like that. So I'm working on porting. Before I get too far along with the porting, thought I'd make a video of what I'm doing here, catch you guys up on it. So I'm knife edging that bridge. See, that bridge is split. That must be something to do with pressure equalization, like I was mentioning. I didn't do that, so that's already there from the factory. So that one, see how I've sharpened it? It's a little bit too, I think I took a little bit too much out of that one, but whatever, it is what it is. Here's what it looked like before. So I'm just improving flow as much as I can here and there. If you look at the side of the wall there in the port, you can see that it's rough. There's casting lines there. See, there's just, it's just a bit of a rough casting, and I'm just smoothing all that out. On this side, you can see where I've been polishing it. So that's what I want it to look like when it's done. I think that the biggest, I'm not changing port timing on this. I'm just cleaning everything up. So I'll just show you here on the sides of the case, see how there's casting lines there? I'm just trying to get those out. See that side, how rough that is? Trying to polish that up. So it's going to look more like this. This side here I've been working on. Haven't got the casting lines out of this side. I wanted to show you guys what it looks like before I get this polished up, just so you know. I'm going to be working on this today. I think one of the big parts that I can see with these engines is right there. That transition where the incoming air is going to go into the port. There's a big casting line and there's a big bump there that can be taken out, but you don't want to go too far. See, that one, there's actually an indent, so I can't polish it out. It's not raised. And then also, let's get my finger in there, this part right here, you can take some out of there as well, because there is a little bit of a dam there, it looks like. See on this side, see the casting, how it's a bit high right there, and it's not much, but it's going to impede flow a little bit. And then you can see right here, there's a bump there, and you can flatten that out a little bit, but you can't go too far, because you don't want to hit that pilot port there, those holes. Definitely don't want to hog into those. So just try to smooth that out a little bit in there. See, you can see where that's actually an indent. It's worse than it looks worse than it actually is. But I am going to smooth that out a little, and then I'm going to polish it. So what I'm using is flapper wheels like this, and I'm using an aluminum carbide like that. I do have some long carbides that I'm going to be using. The other thing that I've noticed is the coolant passage right there. I think I'm going to try and blend that a little bit. So look at how that's blocked off, and it's worse like this side's worse than this side. So what that tells me is, because this side's a little bit bigger and not so restricted, is that there should be enough material there that you're not going to cut into anything if you want to blend it. And what I mean by blending it is just cutting off that sharp edge. See, there's one there too, and these are coolant passages now, and they go up around the power valve. I'll show you where they come out. If you blow air through it, it comes out up in here, is what that's connected to. So that's going to feed coolant, fresh coolant, up to your cylinder head and around your exhaust port, and cooling there is probably the most important. And you know how these T3s heat up if you've got one, if you're working on one. So I'm hoping that if I blend that a little bit, maybe it'll help. You can see that one's, sorry about the light, I don't have a very good light here. That one's the worst. That one's pretty good. That one's probably the best. See, there's hardly any blockage there. And then you got this one that's not too bad either. But look at how much that's going to impede flow there. So I'm going to try to clean that up a little bit. I may even polish a little bit in there just to help flow as much as I possibly can. But right now it's mainly just working on the ports. I'll polish up these transfer ports the best I can, and a little bit on the skirt. I'll be showing you what I'm doing as I go along. I did see a video of a guy playing around with port timing, and because this is a direct injected engine, I'm not worried at all about fuel atomization. Like, I want to get these ports as shiny as I possibly can. And yeah, you can see how rough these transfer ports are down here. So this is just strictly airflow. It's not, we don't have to worry about fuel atomization. I've already started working on that one. You don't have to worry about fuel atomization in this case because all that's flowing through here is going to be air. Well, it's going to have some mix oil in it, like this is all had oil in it. But I'm not worried at all about that, the oil staying atomized when it's going through here. The fuel's injected directly into the cylinder head, so we don't have to worry too much about leaving it rough for fuel atomization. See also the exhaust port, that's right, that's the other thing I'm working on. There was no gain when guys were changing port timing on these engines, so I'm not going to worry about that. So, see if you can see in there. So I'm polishing that exhaust transfer port. You can see that it's kind of restrictive. At the end where it goes into the port, there's kind of like a dam there. There's a huge casting line. That can all be polished out and kind of rounded off. And I've already started that on this side. Let's see if I can get the light in there right. There we go. So see how I'm just blending that into the port itself right here. So you can see what it looks, how rough it is in there, hopefully. You can see casting lines, and you can see how right here there's kind of a ridge, and I'm just blending that into the port, but I'm not actually cutting the port here. I'm just making that a little more round so it's going to, the gases have a smoother path. You can probably see the difference right there. See, casting line's gone and it's kind of got a smooth path into the port. More polishing to do there. Something else, another tool that I've made is this is just a flapper wheel that I took that I cut everything off of, so it was just a piece of steel that's in the inside, cut a slot in it, and then I can just put a piece of emery cloth in there, and then I can put that into my die grinder, one of them, and that'll polish up these ports. I can get into smaller areas, and it's a smaller radius on here, so, and I can also change the grit. I can put crocus cloth, emery cloth, whatever I want in there. So that's worked well. I've used that a bit on different cylinders when I've been porting. Like I say, I don't think that you're going to gain much on these cylinders. Like these engines are dialed pretty good from new. I think it's just a lot of polishing and stuff like that. Maybe make ports a little bit bigger if possible. I don't know how much material's there though, how thick that material is. So I'm not going to get too crazy with it. I don't want to lose power, and I definitely don't want to have a problem where I have to go and buy a new monoblock because I've hogged into I've cut into a coolant passage or something like that. So I'll take you along as I work on this. Of course, you got to be careful that you don't chip your nicasil or anything. I'm not going to be putting my cutters into these ports at all here. I'm just going to stay right out of there because I don't. If it catches, you've probably seen that. I might try to get in there a little bit, but I'm going to be very careful in here. Chamfer the ports a little bit more, maybe with some emery cloth. But if you've used a carbide cutter, you've probably found that it'll catch and then it'll chip. If it hits your nicasil, you can chip it. So a little bit of cleaning up in here. Maybe try and get in there and chamfer a little bit and see how much we can do in there. I think the biggest gain is going to be there, and then in the exhaust ports in here. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'm as far as I'm going to go with cylinder porting on this particular monoblock. So I'll just show you what I did. So pretty much just smoothing out all the rough casting, and then a bit of polishing with the flapper wheel. It could have been better, but things could always be better, and it gets to a point where you just have to call it a day and realize that I don't have a pencil grinder. I'm going to be picking one up, but without that I can't really do much more here. I could polish a little bit more, but I can't get my tool down there far enough because I don't have long enough flapper wheels or a polisher. So this is what I've been using, is just some worn down flapper wheels, and they'll fit in there. Just if you're doing this, be careful that, make sure you keep an eye on your collet. So as you can see there, I can reach down into the port quite deep, but this collar here, your lock collar on your tool, can hit the sides and mark it up. And especially if you're reaching down in here, I didn't reach into the cylinder wall, but you can mark up your nicasil. That's something you got to be careful of. So I'll just show you what I did. I knife edged the bridges. Some guys say you don't gain anything from that. I don't know. So I think it's worth a try if you're already doing some work in there. Every time I rebuild an engine, I usually at least polish the rough casting up. So you can see that it's still a little rough. I used the carbide down in the bottom there to clean it up a little bit. I mean, every time you take material off here, you're going to expand the volume a little bit, but I didn't lower port timing. I didn't play with any of that. Apparently on these engines you don't gain from that anyways. Here's the other side. I'll tell you what the parts that I think you're going to gain from the most if you have your engine apart and you want to do a little bit of porting on it and not take any risks. I know there's guys out there that say don't do it to a two-stroke because it's so risky. You can make it peaky, you can make it this and that. That's true, but if you're just going in and polishing, you're not moving the port timing, you're not changing any of that, I don't see any harm in going ahead and, like right there was pretty rough when I started, and there was like a casting ridge there on both your transfer ports here. So you can just carve that down a little bit with a carbide and then polish it back up with, you see in there where I've been cutting it, polish it back up with a flapper wheel or a polishing wheel. I tried to get into that bridge there because it's pretty rough, and I just ended up using some emery cloth and pulling it back and forth through. It got a little bit better, but like I say, it could always be better. You just get to a point where you've got to, you could spend an unlimited amount of hours on this. The other place that I think you're going to gain a lot from is the casting down in here, right there. There was some ridges. Take those out, and then back down in here inside the port. Down in there, you can smooth that out a lot, and you can flatten it out a little bit, but be careful when you're taking material off these two ridges here, because there's actually coolant ports here that go up through those, and you don't want to cut into those. So you can flatten it out a little bit, like I took some material out of there, flattened it out, but I think the main one is going to be right in here where the air flows. There's a lot of rough casting. You can see that's actually an indentation there that you can see. But there was quite a bit of raised area there from the casting, and especially on here, right in there, turn that off, right here, so the air coming in would hit this ridge. So you can flatten that out, and that's on both sides of both your cylinders. So I think that's where you're going to gain, is this boost port in here, transfer port. The casting edge is right in here, and just flattening this out a little bit, taking a little bit of material out of there and making it a little more of a straight shot, polishing that up on your intakes. Of course, knife edging your bridge, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that, so you can if you want. If you've heard that it's not a good thing to do, then you might want to. And then I just polished as much as I could of the rough casting. And the transfers, of course, they're going to be a little bit bigger. Anytime you remove material, they're going to be a slight bit bigger, which I don't think is a bad thing. But mainly it's just flow. I want to make sure that the airflow isn't impeded. So the other thing that I would suggest doing is, you can see these coolant passages here were blocked off, I bet you 30%. And I got in there with a long carbide cutter and just hogged those out, and I think there's plenty of material there to make that hole flow really well. I wasn't worried about cutting into, breaking into the exhaust port or anything. I think there's a lot of aluminum around there. See a little bit of the casting still in there, like you can see a little bit of a ridge. So I could have blended that a little bit better, but I think the improvement over what it was is going to be so much better. So I hope that it cools better. And then the other thing that you're going to gain on, if you want to do a bit of port work, just tip this up here, is in these exhaust transfer ports. So when I started out, there was kind of a ridge right there. You can blend that right into the circle on the outside, but don't go too far. I actually made a little bit of a dindent there, because if you go too far, your manifold's just going to block it anyways. If you start cutting in down like this, the exhaust manifold's just going to make a ridge there, and you're not going to gain much. But inside there, I found there was a pretty rough ridge right in there of casting flash. Same with up here. So I just polished it and ground that down as best I could. I reached in there as far as I could on both sides. So if you got yours apart, I would suggest that. That's the areas you're going to gain in. It's just kind of straightening those out a little bit and polishing them up a little. And then just polish your exhaust port as much as you can. So the cylinders, nicasil cylinders, you've probably heard, you don't use your hones on these like a stone, because it's too aggressive. If it's shiny like this, if it looks like chrome, that's fine. That's still going to break your rings in. Guys were saying online that green Scotch-Brite pad is what you want. So I couldn't get any at the local store here, and I don't know how far away they are because of shipping lag time and stuff. So this is the closest you can get that I could get is gray Scotch-Brite. So when you go in here and scrub it, just you want to go on an angle, of course. Get your 37-degree crosshatch. I can't hardly even see any crosshatching because of the steel roll or the Scotch-Brite. I think that what I am seeing is probably from the factory hone. So it's not super aggressive stuff, but it does. I think it does give you a little bit of a crosshatch. So it really cleans everything up, though. You'll notice that it takes all the carbon. If there's any aluminum from the pistons or anything, it just makes it a really nice, shiny, smooth finish. So that's all I did, and then of course when I was done all the grinding and scrubbing with the Scotch-Brite and whatnot, I just washed it in soapy water, so dish soap water. I used some super clean, some undiluted Castrol super clean. I'd keep that stuff away from the nicasil because it's pretty corrosive. You never know what it'll do to it. But I just used it to clean some of the heavy greased areas. I got it fairly clean. I would have liked to got a little bit more of it off, but it looks good enough. I mean, this isn't for a customer, it's just for me. So I'm not worried about that. So cleaned up really nice, and then just blow it off, of course, with compressed air. Make sure you get all your ports that especially these exhaust transfer ports. If you've been grinding in there, you want to get all that stuff out of there. You don't want to get into your power valves. And you'll be surprised, even just without changing port timing or anything like that, just cleaning them up and polishing them, how much material you end up with. Like, look at all the aluminum shavings, and because I washed it here, a lot of it got washed away too, but it's just all over the place. Get on the floor there. I had the blocks sitting on those, and they're full of aluminum, so it's surprising how much material you can take out that was left from the casting process from factory. So that's my suggestion on port work. I hope I gained from this. I'm going to pick up a pencil grinder because like I say, every time I rebuild a two-stroke, I always, whether it's a chainsaw or if it's a motorcycle or a snowmobile engine, I always like to at least clean the casting off and polish the ports. So I've been doing more and more of the porting work, and so I'm going to need a smaller tool to get into some of these areas. I don't like reaching in through the cylinder here. I'm not comfortable with the bigger, like the 1/4-inch die grinders to try to get in there. Because like I say, your collet makes contact with your nicasil and you got a chip like right now. I don't think that's worth the risk of it. You need something like a pencil grinder with a 90-degree if you want to get in there. I'm not going to chamfer the ports because they're pretty much factory chamfered. Like I say, I didn't move the ports. I didn't make them any bigger. So I think that'll be just fine the way it is. Anyway, so that's the cylinder prep, monoblock prep. I've got my new reeds, so I'm going to work on the reed blocks. I guess they can be cleaned up a bit and put my Boysen reeds in next. Here's the BDX Y pipe that I got. This is the stainless steel. I didn't get the titanium. It would have been nice, but these are already, by the time I got it shipped, with the difference in the dollar and shipping was double what it was on the website. Still a good deal. I think it was worth it. They say you gain a couple horsepower, was claimed, but it's significantly lighter. And it's a nice piece. It's nice, shiny piece of pipe there. Now I wanted to just mention the exhaust ports. Okay, I got a gasket, the old gasket here. So I was thinking about if it needed it to gasket match. You can see that you could maybe make that a couple millimeters bigger if you wanted to, but I don't think you'd gain anything because your manifold would just block it anyway. So there's a little bit, this manifold, they've polished the inside welds and stuff and made it so it'll flow nice. Get some light in there so you can see it. You can see where they've been working on it, grinding it. The only thing that I was thinking about with this one is there is a bit of a ridge right there. See it? Where the flange and the pipe didn't really meet up perfectly. But I think that this pipe is so... I was going to try and grind that a bit and flush it out and port match it. But the material on this pipe is so thin that I think I'd just end up going right through and then I'd end up with a problem. I'd have to weld it and it wouldn't look good at all. So I'm just going to leave that as is. I'm going to leave this too. Like, the gasket is slightly smaller, but since it's the same, the gasket's the same as the Y pipe, trying to enlarge this port isn't going to hardly gain anything. I guess there's going to be a little bit of a ridge there. I guess I could have hogged it out to the size of the gasket so it matches up better. So that's something you could do if you're in here. See, I could take a millimeter or so off each side. 1/16 of an inch or something. So if you want to, you can make those exhaust ports slightly bigger, I guess. I think this is going to look really good. I'm pretty excited about getting the new parts on it. You know, I Y-pipe in some reeds, should give me some throttle response and stuff, so it's going to be nice. I decided that I would polish everything up in the combustion chamber. You can't get it perfect, but you can get most of the roughness out of there, as you can see. And then on the outside you can get it really smooth, of course, in here. But this is where a lot of the turbulence is happening, and the heat, where the fuel's injected, the ignition is happening right here. So the point is, for me, is I wanted to get these as smooth as I could, because that's where carbon builds up. The carbon can get hot. The rough casting, the pieces that stick up, can get a little warm, start to glow when the engine gets hot, and that can add to detonation problems. I mean, these sleds have a knock sensor, so it'll adjust for that, but at the same time, it's not a bad thing. Like I say, if you start changing the volume of things like your ports, the port timing, or you start cutting the head, trying to change the squish ratio, that's going to change the way the engine runs. If you just polish it, you can't really go wrong. I mean, if you're just cleaning everything up. So that's what I do with the ports. I generally don't make them bigger. I just polish them up. So I just cleaned the exhaust up a little bit more, but I can't get in there with a die grinder with a polishing wheel on it, because I don't have anything that small, especially in here too. I couldn't get in there, so I just used my Dremel with the polishing kit, a basic general purpose kit. I started with the stone. You can see it's all covered in aluminum. I got some Jeweler's Rouge. The Jeweler's Rouge I don't think is quite as good a polish for what I'm doing. I'm sure it works good for other applications. And just a smooth Tootsie Roll like that, and then a buffer pad. I've got the buffer pad on it now. Use that. It's all black. But this is the polish that I like to use for aluminum. It's some Mothers, and it works quite well. Cleans up pretty good. It'll leave a black residue, but you can get a very nice finish with that Mothers stuff. You've got to, of course, get it close with some sort of like an emery cloth that's not very aggressive. Work finer and finer, and then by the time you use the Mothers, you can get a chrome-like finish. That's as far as I'm going to go with the cylinder head. I'm just going to wipe it down a little bit. I've got a little bit of material here that I just need to smooth out a little bit, but that's looking really good. Next, after that, I think I'm going to get my pistons put together here. I've got the brand new pistons down there, SPI, SPX, I guess they're the same thing. And then I got to clean my power valves up and get those in. So I'm going to start by, I think next I'm going to put the pistons in, start getting the monoblock ready here.